Today's message is from John's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 38 through 42. Let's begin by reading it. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. When we think about the crucifixion of Jesus, we normally picture the crowds, the soldiers, the angry voices, and even the disciples fleeing into the night. But in the quiet moments after Jesus breathed his last, another story unfolds, one not filled with shouts and torches, but with whispers, courage, tears, and devotion. It is the story of two men, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. These are not the men who stood beside Jesus during his miracles. They are not the men who walked with him openly through Galilee. They are not even the ones who argued boldly in public about who he truly was. In fact, up to this moment, both of these men probably had followed Jesus secretly. But now, at the most dangerous moment possible, when Jesus seems defeated, when his disciples disappeared, when his movement seems dead, and when associating with him could ruin everything, now these two quiet men step forward. And this moment, as we see in John 19:38 to 42, teaches us something profound, not only about Jesus, but about faith, discipleship, courage, and what it means to honor Christ even when the world is not watching. The passage begins, "Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders." What an honest and revealing statement. Joseph of Arimathea was a member of the Sanhedrin, the ruling council of Israel. He was wealthy, respected, educated, and influential. He had much to lose. If he openly followed Jesus, he could lose his position, his reputation, his wealth, and even his safety. So for months, maybe years, he followed Jesus quietly, watching, listening, learning, but never confessing. But now, when Jesus is dead, when the disciples are terrified, when public opinion is at its worst, Joseph finally steps out and goes to Pilate. This is not a small thing. Only a close family member or an officially authorized person could request the body of a crucified criminal. And if someone claimed the body, it was assumed that they identified with the condemned man. Joseph is saying to Rome and to the Jewish leaders, "This Jesus whom you executed, I belong to him." Where did this courage come from? The death of Jesus broke something inside Joseph. Hiding no longer made sense. Fear no longer controlled him. He couldn't let Jesus' body be thrown into the common grave of criminals. So he steps out of the shadows. Some people come to Jesus with great emotion. Others come quietly with trepidation. Some step forward early. Others step forward late. But what matters most of all is that they step forward. Joseph teaches us that even if your faith has been quiet, even if you feel like you followed Jesus from a distance, even if fear has kept you silent, there comes a moment when love gives you courage. The cross has a way of calling us out of hiding. Verse 39 says, "He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night." John wants us to remember this detail. Nicodemus first came to Jesus in the dark. He was curious, cautious, unsure, but Jesus spoke to him about being born again, and we learn of him again in John 7. In John 7, we see Nicodemus timidly argue with the Pharisees for fairness when others want Jesus dead. But now he comes not in the cover of night, but in the full light of day, not with questions, not with caution, but with a bold act of love. He brings 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes, 75 pounds, an extravagant amount normally reserved for the burial of kings. Nicodemus is declaring, This man crucified as a criminal is my king. And here's something beautiful. Joseph and Nicodemus did not plan this. They did not text each other. They did not coordinate. But love for Christ brought them together at the foot of his broken body. This shows us something about the nature of faith. True love for Jesus draws worshipers together. Even the faint-hearted become bold. Even late disciples become courageous disciples. Nicodemus, the man who once hid in darkness, now brings enough burial spices to fill a room. Why? Because love, once awakened, cannot be hidden. Verse 40 reads, taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. Think about this moment. Jesus' body is bloody, pierced, bruised, and lifeless. The one who raised the dead must now be carried by trembling hands. The hands that once healed others must now be tended to by those he has touched. Joseph and Nicodemus, men of status, wealth, and refinement, now bend over the broken body of a crucified Nazarene. This is holy work. This is love in its purest form. This is worship without words. No crowds, no miracles, no preaching, no music, no spotlight. Just two men quietly honoring the one who died for them. Here is a truth we must not miss. Sometimes the greatest acts of devotion are done when no one is watching. Not on Sunday mornings, not behind a pulpit, not for applause, but in the quiet, costly moments when you simply do what is right before God. Joseph gave Jesus his tomb. Nicodemus gave Jesus spices fit for royalty. Together they gave Jesus dignity in death. Your acts of kindness, your unseen prayers, your private sacrifices may be the most fragrant worship you ever offer to God. In verse 41, John gives us details that seem small, but are actually full of meaning. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden. A garden. Genesis begins in a garden. Sin entered in a garden. Humanity fell in a garden. And here, at the place of Jesus' death and resurrection, we find another garden. In this garden, there was a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. This is no coincidence. Jesus is the second Adam, and in this garden, he will reverse what the first Adam lost. A new tomb means no confusion about whose body rises. In Judea during the time of Christ, many Jewish families, especially in and around Jerusalem, used rock-cut tombs carved into hillsides. These tombs would hold multiple bodies. Naysayers couldn't say it wasn't Jesus who rose from the dead, but some other body that lay in the grave. This is noteworthy precisely because it was unusual. New tombs typically would go on to receive many burials. Furthermore, a nearby tomb means the burial had to be quick as the Sabbath approached. A garden tomb symbolizes that beauty will rise where death once ruled. Nothing is hidden from God. God is Lord over all. He arranges even the details of the tomb. Isaiah had prophesied regarding the Messiah's burial. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Jesus died the death of a criminal, but was buried with the honor of the wealthy. He was buried with the wealthy not because money saved him, but because God's plan was unfolding with precision. The cross looks like defeat, the tomb looks like finality, the spices look like the end, but this is only Friday. Sunday is coming. In this burial, heaven is quietly preparing a stage for the greatest victory the world has ever seen. This passage does not simply tell us what Joseph and Nicodemus did. It tells us what we are called to do. Joseph believed secretly for fear. Nicodemus came by night. Both hesitated. Both were slow to step forward, and yet God used them powerfully. Maybe you feel like you should have done more for Jesus earlier in your life. Maybe you feel like your faith has been quiet. Maybe you regret being silent when you should have spoken. However, it is never too late to be bold for Christ. It is never too late to honor him. It is never too late to step out of the shadows. Jesus did not shame Joseph and Nicodemus. He received their devotion. He accepted their offering. He honored their courage, and he will receive yours as well. True courage appears when the world is walking away. Everyone had fled. The disciples had fled. But Joseph and Nicodemus arrived. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is love refusing to hide. Jesus said, "Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven." Your stand for Christ may cost you something, your reputation, your comfort. People may reject you. But Joseph reminds us some truths are too precious to hide. These men did not preach a sermon. They did not perform miracles. They did not write a gospel. But they gave Jesus dignity when the world gave him shame. They gave him devotion when others gave him insults. They gave him love when others gave him cruelty. Perhaps your ministry is not public. Perhaps your service is unseen. Perhaps your faithfulness happens secretly. But God sees it. God values it. God uses it. The Jewish leaders were sure they had silenced Jesus. The tomb seemed like it was the end, but it was not. God was arranging every detail, the garden, the timing, the tomb, the spices, the Sabbath, all of it, preparing for resurrection morning. Knowing that Jesus holds everything in his hand, this should encourage us. When you feel like you are defeated, when you feel like there is no hope, remember that God is quietly arranging your circumstances for a victory. In closing, visualize the scene leading up to Jesus' burial. Joseph carries the feet of Jesus. Nicodemus carries the upper body. Their robes are stained with the blood of their Savior. The sun will soon be setting, ushering in the Sabbath day. The air is still. The world is quiet. There are no crowds to impress, no miracles to witness. Just two men and their crucified King. And with trembling hands, they prepare his body with love. This is discipleship. This is devotion. This is courage. And in many ways, this moment foreshadows something even greater. Just as Joseph and Nicodemus took Jesus down from the cross and prepared him for burial, God was preparing Jesus for resurrection. Even when Jesus' body lay lifeless, heaven was not finished. The grave was not victorious. Death was not final. And when Joseph rolled the stone across the entrance of the tomb, he did not know that he had just sealed the doorway of the world's greatest miracle. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus challenge us with a simple question. Are you ready to step out of the shadows for Jesus? Not tomorrow, not someday, not when it's convenient, but today. When it's risky, when it's costly, when others walk away, when few are watching, when it is nothing but you and Jesus, Jesus deserves your courage. He deserves your devotion. He deserves your honor because he gave everything for you. Let us be the kind of followers who honor Jesus, not only when it is easy, but especially when it is costly. Let love lead you out of hiding. Let courage move you toward Christ. And let your devotion, seen or unseen, bear witness to your King.